Everyone thinks trading is about action. More trades, more entries, more opportunities. Always doing something. Because doing nothing feels like missing out. It feels like you're wasting time. Like you're not progressing. Like you're falling behind. But what if that's exactly why you're losing? Because you're always doing something. You wake up, you open the charts, and immediately your mind starts searching, looking for setups, for signals, for anything that justifies taking a trade, not because it's there, but because you want it to be there. And that's where the problem begins, because the market doesn't move for you. It doesn't care if you're ready. It doesn't care if you want a trade. Sometimes there's nothing to do. And most traders can't accept that, so they force it. They see patterns that aren't really there. They convince themselves that this trade is good enough. They lower their standards just to be involved, just to feel like they're doing something. And in that moment, you're no longer trading your system. You're feeding your need to act, because being still feels uncomfortable. Silence feels uncomfortable. Waiting feels uncomfortable. So you replace it with action, even if that action costs you. And it usually does. Because forced trades are rarely clean. They don't have structure. They don't have confirmation. They're built on impatience. And impatience always shows up in your results. You enter too early. You exit too quickly. You hesitate when it matters. You overreact to every movement. Not because the market is confusing, but because your mind is restless. And a restless mind cannot trade consistently. Because trading rewards clarity. And clarity only comes when you're willing to wait, to sit, to observe without reacting, to accept that not every moment requires action, that sometimes the best decision is to do nothing. But that's the hardest thing to do. Because when you sit there, watching the market move without you, your mind starts talking. What if this is the move? What if I miss it? What if I could have made something here? And slowly, that quiet discipline turns into pressure. Pressure to act. Pressure to be involved. Pressure to not miss out. And that pressure pushes you into trades that were never part of your plan. Not because they're good, but because they're available. And availability is not the same as opportunity. The market is always moving. There will always be candles forming, patterns appearing, prices shifting. But not all movement is meant for you. Not every setup is yours to take. And the moment you start treating every movement like an opportunity, you lose selectivity. You lose patience. You lose control. Because now you're reacting to the market instead of waiting for the market to meet your conditions. And that shift is everything. Because professionals don't trade more, they trade less. They don't need constant action. They need the right conditions. They're not afraid of missing out because they understand something most traders ignore. There will always be another trade, but there won't always be another account. And that changes how you behave. Because now your priority is not catching every move, it's protecting your capital. It's staying consistent. It's making sure that when you do act, it actually matters. And that requires restraint, the ability to sit through hours, sometimes days, without doing anything. Not because you're lazy, but because there's nothing worth doing. And that kind of discipline feels invisible. No one sees it. No one talks about it. There's no excitement in it. But it's what separates traders who survive from those who don't.
Because survival in trading is not about how much you make in one move. It's about how long you can stay in the game. And every unnecessary trade slowly works against that. It chips away at your capital, at your confidence, at your ability to stay disciplined, not all at once, but over time, quietly, consistently. And most traders don't even notice it happening because each trade feels small, each decision feels justified, each loss feels like just one more. But when you look at it as a whole, you see the pattern, not of the market, but of your behavior. You see that the losses didn't come from bad setups, they came from unnecessary ones, from trades you didn't need to take, from moments where doing nothing would have been the better decision. And that realization changes everything. Because now you stop measuring your performance by how active you are. You stop feeling productive just because you placed a trade. You start asking a different question. Did I need to be in this trade? And if the answer is no, then it doesn't matter if it won or lost. It was still a mistake. Because consistency is not built on outcomes. It's built on decisions. And the best decisions are often the ones you don't take, the trades you avoid, the setups you ignore, the impulses you control. That's where discipline lives, not in action, but in restraint. And once you understand that, your entire approach starts to shift. You no longer chase movement, you wait for alignment. You don't rush into setups, you let them come to you. You don't feel the need to always be in the market, because you know your edge is not in activity, it's in selectivity. And selectivity requires patience, the kind of patience that most traders never build, because it doesn't feel like progress, it feels like doing nothing. But in reality, it's the most productive thing you can do.
Because when you stop forcing trades, something unexpected happens. Your mind becomes clearer. You're no longer overwhelmed by constant decisions. You're no longer reacting to every small movement. You start seeing the market for what it is, not what you want it to be. And that clarity changes your entries. Now, when a real setup appears, you recognize it instantly. There's no hesitation, no second guessing, because you haven't exhausted your focus on unnecessary trades. You're sharp, present, ready. And that's the difference. Most traders are tired, not from trading too little, but from trading too much. Too many decisions, too many emotions, too many unnecessary risks. And by the time a real opportunity comes, they're not in the right state to take it. They hesitate, they doubt, or worse, they ignore it completely because their energy is already gone. But when you learn to do nothing, you protect that energy, you preserve your focus, you stay patient long enough to catch what actually matters. And that's where your edge shows up. Not in constant activity, but in timed precision. Because trading is not about being active all the time. It's about being ready at the right time. And readiness comes from restraint, from discipline, from the ability to sit in silence without needing to act. And that's not easy, because your mind will always try to pull you back into action. It will tell you that you're missing out, that you should be doing more, that you're not progressing. But that's just noise. And the more you learn to ignore that noise, the more control you gain. Because now your decisions are not driven by urgency, they're driven by intention. And that's what separates consistency from chaos. One is built on patience, the other on impulse.
And when you start operating with intention, something else becomes clear. You don't need more trades. You need better ones. You don't need more screen time. You need better timing. Because the market is not rewarding you for how long you sit there. It's rewarding you for what you do when it matters. And most of the time, nothing is happening. That's the part people don't like because it doesn't look productive. There's no movement, no excitement, no result, just waiting. But that waiting is where discipline is built. It's where you learn to trust your rules, to stay aligned with your plan, to resist the urge to act just because you can. And every time you choose not to take a bad trade, you strengthen that discipline. You prove to yourself that you're in control, not the market, not your emotions, you. And that control shows up later. When a real setup appears, you don't rush it, you don't hesitate, you execute cleanly because you've trained yourself to wait for it. And that's the shift most traders never make. They think success comes from doing more, but in trading, success comes from doing less, better. Fewer trades, cleaner setups, stronger discipline. And that only happens when you're comfortable doing nothing. Because doing nothing is not weakness, it's control, it's confidence. It's understanding that you don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be right when it matters. And that mindset removes pressure. You're no longer chasing the market. You're letting it come to you. You're not reacting. You're waiting. And in that waiting, you're building something most traders never have: consistency. Not because you're always winning, but because you're no longer making unnecessary mistakes. And that alone changes everything. And when unnecessary mistakes disappear, your results start to stabilize. Not dramatically at first, but steadily. Because now you're not giving back what you earn. You're not entering random trades that undo your progress. You're not letting impatience take control. You're simply maintaining discipline. And that consistency compounds, trade by trade, day by day. Because every time you choose not to act when there's no reason to, you protect your capital. You protect your mindset. You protect your edge. And over time, that protection becomes your advantage. While others are overtrading, you're waiting. While others are forcing setups, you're observing. While others are reacting, you're staying still. And that difference adds up, not in one moment, but across many. Because trading is not about one perfect trade. It's about a series of decisions. And the fewer bad decisions you make, the stronger your results become. That's why doing nothing is so powerful. Not because it guarantees profits, but because it removes unnecessary losses. And removing losses is just as important as finding winners. Because what you keep matters more than what you chase. And once you understand that, you stop trying to be active. You start trying to be accurate. You stop chasing movement. You start waiting for clarity. You stop reacting and start deciding. And that shift is where consistency becomes real. And when that consistency becomes real, everything changes. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling like you're behind. You stop needing every moment in the market to mean something. Because now you understand. Most moments don't. Most of the time, the best thing you can do is nothing. Not because you don't know what to do, but because there's nothing worth doing. And that awareness is what separates you. Because while others are chasing movement, you're waiting for meaning. While others are reacting to every candle, you're waiting for confirmation. While others are losing control, you're building it. And over time, that control becomes your edge. Not a strategy, not an indicator, but your ability to stay disciplined when there's nothing happening. Because that's where most traders fail. Not in action, but in stillness. They can't sit without trading. They can't wait without forcing something. They can't stay patient without feeling pressure. And that's why they lose. Not because the market is hard, but because they can't stay still long enough to let it work. So here's the lesson. You don't need to trade more to make more. You need to trade less, but better. You need to stop chasing every opportunity and start waiting for the right one. Because in trading, your biggest wins don't come from constant action. They come from precise decisions made at the right time. So the next time you open the charts and nothing is happening, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't force a trade. Don't convince yourself that you need to act. Just sit, observe, wait. Because sometimes doing nothing is exactly what keeps you profitable. And if you can master that, you won't just trade differently, you'll trade consistently.